It's now time to bring it all back. That's right. It's season 2 of Behind the Comic Book podcast with Mr. 845 Social. Brought to you by Icon Comiccon.
Hey everybody, it's Mr. 845 here, and we're back doing another Behind the Comic Book podcast interview. This is Benjamin. Before we get to you, I want to make sure that we intro the sponsor of this podcast, Icon Comiccon, coming to the Fishkill Recreation Center November the 1st, 2025 from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. We have loads of artists, guests. Russ Braun is coming, one of the astounding artists out there. Ryan Gary Brown, up and coming local. We have Martin Zavala, Gus Mock, Chris Mad. We have AJ Marone, newcomer. We have a lot of artists. We have comic book up the galore, if you will, vendors, podcasters, you name it, we got it. So make sure you check us out November 1st. IconComiccon.com is for the tickets. And now back to our guest. Benjamin, tell us, who are you and what do you do?
My name is Benjamin Hunting, and I'm here to talk about a book that I've got coming out on Kickstarter on October 7th. It's called Model UN. You can find the Kickstarter preview and sign up page at modeluncomic.com. And it's a book that takes place in the mid-90s at a small private school where there's a bunch of kids who have a Model UN club. They're a bunch of kind of, geeks and nerds and misfits. But what they weren't expecting, especially so close to graduation, was a group of aliens to show up on the Earth and demand to negotiate with them, mistaking them for the actual United Nations. So the book kind of plays on the idea that these kids are thrust into a situation they're totally unprepared for. They're all, 17, 18 years old and just want to get through final exams. And on the alien side, the leader is so stubborn, they refuse to admit the fact that maybe they're probably wrong about who the actual rulers of the Earth are, and no matter what their crew is trying to tell them. So it's confusion and chaos on both sides, and the fate of the planet hangs in the balance over the course of a weekend.
Wow. A course of a weekend. Oh,
yeah,
goodness.
It's an accelerated schedule. Those aliens are on a schedule, so they can't hang around forever.
I don't know. Awesome. So, I mean, it basically is like a saga, if you will, but a 3-day saga, if you will.
Yeah,
right?
it's like, so originally when I came up with I just had this idea that I thought Model UN would be a cool thing as like a structure for storytelling about kids in school. Mm-hmm. And I never got to do Model UN when I was a kid. Like, it just wasn't at my school. So I was kind of jealous of people who had that experience. But then I realized that maybe it'd be a little more interesting if it wasn't just a slice of life book, if it was like a slice of life / sci-fi, and I could make it funny. I could put some comedy in there. And I've never written anything like manga before. And this is kind of done in a manga black and white style. And I was in between issues on another book I was doing, and the artist I was working with fell ill, and they're recovering, and so I had some time to do something else. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to do something completely different, and I gave myself the challenge. Okay, like, try this manga style, do it in 100 or 120 pages, and just get it out there and have fun with it. So that's kind of, I put these pressures on myself to see what it would do to creativity. And so far, it's turned out pretty good. The first half of the book's like 54 pages. So wow. I'm hoping there's
like
another
graphic novel, right?
Yeah. I'm doing it probably in 2 halves. And I'm doing it entirely digital because I'm based in Canada. And normally most of the readers of my previous books, Code 45 and Dead Air, have been in the United States. But with tariffs, I can't ship across the border with any kind of reliability. And I wasn't about to saddle my readers with unexpected customs charges that they couldn't do anything about. So I'm like, all right, I guess I'm going full digital for the first time in my life. It's like my 6th Kickstarter, and I had to relearn all the tricks and tips that I had because all the rewards are different, and the style of putting the book together is different. And it's just a whole bunch of a learning process for me, and hopefully it comes out good in the end. I mean, we'll see, a few weeks away, but
yeah, no, I'm excited for you. So, I always like to make sure that we bring it back to the beginning before we kind of get into the book, and kind of like going through a lot of it, and what else you have in store, right? Sure. So when you talk about, writing a book, writing a graphic novel or anything like that, when you were younger, is this something that you always wanted to do with yourself? Or is this like, like you're doing something and all of a sudden it's like, I want to do this instead. So like, tell us like how you started this whole thing.
I came to comics really late in life. I've always wanted to be a writer, and in fact, I am a pro writer for the last 18 years. That's how I support myself, mostly in automotive and culture writing. But as you all know, there's no straight path to get to this kind of business, right? Like everyone has their own crooked way of squeaking into the writing world. And I read comics when I was a kid, but it was mostly like Sunday newspaper comics. I loved Charles Schultz and Bill Watterson and, Berkeley Breathe and all that stuff, Doonesbury. I was really into it. I just wasn't around comic books other than that. Archie and Veronica and Jughead I saw because I had a babysitter who would bring them by, and I never sought them out. I wasn't a big superhero kind of guy. And then in my early 30s, I moved into a neighborhood that had a comic book store that had just opened like a couple of blocks away. And I wandered in, and it was the place is called Crossover Comics in Montreal. And it was really the staff at Crossover, who've all become friends now, who like pushed me into this world of independent comics that I didn't know existed. Like I had no real understanding of comics outside of what Marvel and DC had been. And I wasn't really attracted to that. So I started reading books by Alison Bechdel and Simon Hanselman, and just discovering this whole new world of like amazing work and incredible stories. And it's broadened my palette to this point where I'm just constantly reading almost everything I can get my hands on. And I as I said, I'm a pro writer, but like in terms of fiction, I'd written a novel, self-published it maybe around 2011, but I had these story ideas specifically that I thought would be better in a visual medium. And around 2019, I reached out to some friends of mine. One friend, Angela Hodge, who's a designer and graphic designer, who I grew up with, and her partner, Joe Ng, who's a professional comics artist. He's worked for Transformers, Street Fighter, G.I. Joe. And I was like, hey, I have this idea for a comic. I'm writing a script. Do you know anyone who would be interested in drawing it? And it turned out that Joe was interested in drawing it, which I never in a million years expected. And so we worked together on that book called Code 45, and that came out through Scout Comics a few years later. I can't recommend going with Scout Comics. Anyone out there listening, it was a pretty bad experience. The book did reach shelves, and Simon and Schuster put us out as a trade paperback, but they're pretty shifty guys. So stay away from them. And then Joe and Angela and I got together on a second book called Dead Air, and that's the book that's a little bit on hiatus now. And that's what led me to Model UN, where Dead Air was in between issues, and I still wanted to be creating something because, like, I think once you start, there's no way to stop. It's an outlet that you're constantly thinking of stories. At least I am, stories that I want to tell the world, and hopefully the world finds them interesting. And that's kind of what I'm about to find out, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's also important because like you have that creativity, you have the flow right there and then. You don't want to like stop it and then all of a sudden you lose all that gold. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So you definitely have to like keep going. So now let's like kind of go into the comic book itself, right? Or graphic novel, if you will. I'd probably call it
comic book's novel. Fine. It's all good.
I mean, it's a hefty CGC submission, but for 54 pages. But so let's take it through like the premise. So there's 5 individual kids. They're at like some sort of school, or
well, there's a bunch of kids. Originally, when I came up with the idea, I was like, oh, it's going to be a big group, right? And that'll be fun. And then you try to write 20 different characters and give them enough time on the page to be actually interesting, or at least like memorable to the reader. And you quickly discover that that's impossible. So I pared it down to like a group of diehards, and you end up with, kids who are super keen to be there and maybe take it a little too seriously. And then you have the kids who are just there because they need the credit. And then you have the kids that are floating along and just doing what other kids are doing. Right. So it was a fun way to put a bunch of different kids in a room and then shake that room up and see what happens and see how these personalities interact with each other. And the way I chose to shake the room up was alien invasion, which is maybe a little extreme, but it was a way for me to, I ended up, I was expelled from the public high school I went to when I was a teenager. And where I live in Quebec, most people speak French. So there's not a lot of English schools. And the only school I could go to finish my high school was this like small private school that was like very much the British school model of like having prefects and all of that stuff. And it was horrible. It was like 3 years of hell. And I was like, is there a way I could take something good out of that terrible experience and like make it funny and kind of put it into this book? So I pulled out all the weird experiences I had with like hierarchy and discipline and the kids that I met there. and tried to inject some like of my own experience into the story.
Wow, that's cool. Yeah, I mean, so you're taking an outlet of, it could be things that you were reminded of, and you kind of personalized it and brought it into this book. That's pretty cool. I mean, it's a way of telling a self story, but not necessarily a self story, right? Because there were no
Yeah.
aliens, right? So
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean that I knew of. That
yeah.
school was weird, man. Like I don't know what was going on behind the scenes, but I didn't see any aliens.
Okay. I mean, they could be disguised.
It's
They
true.
have the
And in the
technology.
90s, aliens disguised as teachers was like a big thing in movies. So it's
Yeah.
entirely possible.
So now, who did you get to draw up on the Model UN side when you were
So
getting the characters ready?
So the artist that I was working with, is that what you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I Joe, as I said, he fell ill. He's recovering, and it's not really his thing. And I didn't know anyone who drew in a manga style, so I ended up on some Facebook groups that connect artists and writers. And I met a guy named I.E. Santiana Hernandez. He's a guy who lives in Argentina. He's originally from Peru. And what attracted me to his portfolio was the ability to not just draw like technology and sci-fi elements in a really believable and interesting way, but he could also, the faces of his characters made me feel like I could tell what they were thinking. I could see emotion on them.
Mm-hmm.
And I find that combination is not something you always find. Like people have strengths and weaknesses as artists, just as writers do. And it was cool to see someone who could combine like a hard sci-fi element with a really humanistic element. And so we hooked up, and I'm really glad that we did, because in addition to being a fantastic artist, as a co-creator, he's really come on board with some really intriguing ideas for certain parts of the narrative and how certain characters, particularly the aliens, are portrayed. And it's just a different perspective that I wouldn't have had if I hadn't been working with him. So it's been exciting. The other really great thing about working with Santiana Hernandez is that he's really keen on trying different things. So even without asking him, he'd be looking at a page. He'd be like, "Hey, I had 3 different ideas to lay out this page. Which one do you think is cool?" And then we could go from there and create something that's, collaborative. Whereas it's not always like that when you're working with other people on a team. I mean, ideally it should be, but in this case, there was no extra prompting. It was like he was constantly volunteering great ideas, and I'm all about great ideas. Like it doesn't need to come from me.
Yeah.
So I love the fact that he was just brimming with cool stuff that he wanted to put on the page.
Yeah, no, I mean it gels pretty quickly. You could definitely see the emotion in the faces of the characters, and I'm sure I'm not sure if this is one of the scenes from it, but there's like a character breakdown of Anita Vaughn. Is that?
Yes, yeah. So like I thought it would be fun to have kind of a video game-esque like stats panel for each of the main characters. And by doing that, it was like a shorthand. I only wanted the story to be 120 pages, right? So to develop them, it was a shorthand way for me to get in and give you like the yearbook snapshot of what this kid is like in their last year of high school,
Yeah.
and kind of what their relationship is with the other students. And it's not like cheating, but it is a shortcut, and that was fun to do. And when I sketched out that panel, I didn't know exactly how it would look. And so IE was like, he came up with the idea of, originally I was going to describe everything and like all the little panels about all their accessories and what they're wearing. But as a writer, it's like super easy to forget that you should just show what's on the page instead of describing what's on the page, and that the image is like so important. And so the way he created the panels and focused on the visual descriptors showing the reader what these characters were all about, it was so much better than what I had planned. So it's fun stuff like that, like I tried to have a good time with it.
So now you have that for every character in there, because it's cool. Because like in my mind, as soon as I saw that panel, I was like immediately like, you know how like they have that cut series when they're like in the 90s, they used to cut to like the different characters.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
Family Matters, it would be like everybody got their chance to just be in the camera and stuff. I feel like it's kind of very similar to that.
It is for all the main characters have that, and some of the alien characters as well. And it's like a mixture between what you're describing and like in a fighting video game when you're on the load screen and you're trying to choose your character.
Choose your character.
Yeah, exactly. I wanted to get that kind of energy in it too.
Yeah. No, I mean that's an awesome way to kind of bring a call back to the 90s, right? In the sense that everybody was playing like Mortal Kombat, where we're playing Street Fighter, Soul Calibur, all these great games that, they had their characters and then like they had their stats next to them and stuff like that. So like take us through the if you can, take us through a little like a snippet of the stories and stuff like that. So now, these kids all of a sudden have like this alien invasion happening. It's basically they're trapped in school, or are they going out and trying to like combat them? Like what's going on?
I don't want to give too much away, but the crux of the story for me was I find that when you put people in a high pressure situation, you really find out who they are. And an interesting thing for me in this story was introducing characters and showing them as they present themselves when they're just going to school on a regular day at this model UN, and then showing who those characters are when the aliens show up. And all of a sudden, people who seemed like they were in a leadership position at the outset, maybe they completely freeze and they don't know what to do. And then people who are floating around in the background surprise themselves by stepping forward, taking control of the situation, and maybe saving the day, or at least saving a few scenes, So that was a fun way to explore character in a stressful, but like a stressful prompt. You don't always get a chance. Like, again, it's only going to be a certain number of pages, right? So all the character development has to take place in the situation for the most part, except, when I got the character panels and stuff in there. So that was something interesting that I wanted to explore. And really, I think that every single story is about people, and science fiction in particular. It's always about who we are. It's not necessarily about the future or what aliens are. It just gives us a different perspective to look at ourselves. So that's kind of something I'm focusing on here too. Like, how do these hierarchies that we create for ourselves look when they're thrust into like the most absurd possible situation? Like aliens show up, and on their side, they have their way of doing things. And is that weird, or is it really so different from what we've kind of imprisoned ourselves with hierarchy? And that's something, again, that I pulled from my weird high school stuff. So it's like a therapy session, I guess.
The clicks, if you will. Yeah.
Yeah, the clicks and the weird teacher things, and the weird disciplinary stuff.
So like with this, this is the first 54 pages, right?
Yeah, the first half.
And then so part one. And now, are you already working on part two, or is this something that you're going to start leading into?
So part one is complete. The art is all complete, lettered, and everything ready to go. Whenever I do a Kickstarter, I try to have it as finished as possible, and we managed to get everything done beforehand this time. I've started working on the second part. It's in the layout, not the layout, but the outline stage. I've got maybe 20 pages of it written, and I'm gonna be working with my editor, Kevin Bircher, on that pretty soon. And hopefully the plan is to get it out on the Kickstarter in spring of next year, or somewhere around that time. That feels like a realistic timeline where I'm not going to feel upset at myself if in terms of pressure. It gives me some time to work over the holidays a little bit and refine things. So that's the idea. Just to get it. I don't want it to be like a saga that goes on and on. I really want it to be a self-contained story. And it would be nice maybe one day if the border situation changes to do a print version, but not really focused on that right now.
Yeah. Now with you being in Canada now, do you go to any cons and basically show off your work in that sense in the printed format, or is it still also digital when you go to cons up there?
So all of our previous books have been physical copies. They've all been hard copies. But as a writer, going to cons is like weird. So, I don't really do it. It's not a type of promo that I've really done. And like I said, coming late to comics, I didn't grow up with like con culture. So there is a Comic-Con in Montreal and a few nearby. I've gone to those just as a spectator and had a good time. In terms of crossing the border to the US to go to a con, it's really complicated bringing stuff that you're going to sell across the border. So that's not something that I have attempted at this point.
Okay. Yeah, no, I mean, so I'm a promoter of a con, so like my whole thing is like to think of different premises to kind of help writers, especially because sometimes it's very difficult. You didn't create the artwork, but you created the art of the word, right? And it's sometimes hard when either somebody's like off-putting with your artwork, they don't give your book a chance. So it's always like difficult for writers in a con situation.
It's like writers are like the dads at the maternity ward, where like they're part of the process, but in the moment they're not all that interesting and they're not useful. Like I can't sketch anything, I can't do commissions. It's a little weird.
But we put in good values. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
No, but that's kind of the premise. So being that said, what is the way that you've been able to really promote your book? What parts of the digital world have you been able to like spread the word?
I mean, so we've been really fortunate in the past to have really good support on our books. I don't know how this is going to go because it's so different. Black and white, manga, digital only. Those are like three strikes against everything that I've done before. I have a pretty good mailing list, email list, and I find that that's been a great way to keep in touch with people who supported my work. But it's also an excellent way to let them know what's coming down the pipe. So I've been primarily relying on that. This time around, I'm appearing on podcasts for the first time. Yeah, and I'm enjoying it, and I appreciate that you're taking the time to do this kind of thing because it's very helpful. Because I think that before this, I've also used social media, whether it's buying Facebook ads or Instagram ads. I don't think social media is really that useful for promotion anymore. I feel like it's very easy to get lost in the storm of what's out there. I also find that we had a Facebook page with 5,000 members, and getting them to see what we're posting on that page is almost impossible unless you're willing to pay Facebook a significant amount of money. And at this point, the value just doesn't seem to be there. And it's frustrating because you build an audience on a platform. If that platform doesn't belong to you, you have no control over where the future of that audience goes. So that's been a real learning lesson. And so this time around, it's mostly podcasts, it's mostly the mailing list, and we've always gotten good support from Kickstarter itself, just in terms of the community that's on there checking out our books. So that's kind of the three elements I'm leaning on this time.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it's great to hear that, you're utilizing other options when like certain things don't meet and you're still worthy of trying to like push the content out in other ways. Right. So, or worthy is not really the right word, but accommodating, if you will, to be able to like, you believe in your work so much that you don't care where it goes. You have to make sure that you get that voice out there. Right.
Yeah. I mean, you got to try different things. If something you've done in the past doesn't work, I mean, you don't keep doing that over and over, right? You try to find something that will complement whatever strategy you have in the moment. And it can be really intimidating. I'm far from an expert on Kickstarter. This is maybe my sixth one, but we've raised decent funds on there. We've always fulfilled our books. And I feel like even with that experience, it's a constantly changing environment. And it's easy to like, it's been about a year since I've had a book on Kickstarter, and I go to it now and so many things have changed. And you really have to kind of keep your finger on the pulse and figure out not so much what works on Kickstarter, but how Kickstarter works, because that's not a static thing.
Yeah. And the digital age is here, as you know, like since the pandemic, a lot of people are going virtual and doing a remote and stuff like that. So it kind of helps that a lot of people are now more familiar with a lot of these platforms, so that you can actually get your voice out there. I wanted to kind of get more of your style and kind of like, what brought you into this writing world is like, I know that this is kind of like a sci-fi. Is it more like comedy, horror?
It's
action,
more comedy.
Drama. Okay.
It's definitely like sci-fi comedy. I mean, the kids are funny. The aliens are funny. Just the clueless leader is a big part of it. It helps you have something that's threatening, but also diffuses the tension from time to time, because as a reader, you can see that this entity clearly doesn't know what it's doing. It allows me to explore ideas like nepotism and the illusion of meritocracy, and how some people can just continually fail upward until they hit a glass ceiling that they can't fail past anymore. Yeah. And everyone around them knows, but they don't know. And that's funny to me. So I wanted to have elements of that in there too.
No, and like I know that you're probably going to get it out there, especially with the drawing of the emotion in the faces, kind of like so how do you like line up the comedy, if you will? Like, is it something where like they make swift quips, or is it more like, it's kind of like innuendos? Like where do you put the comedy at in that sense?
I think it's more the situation. I think it's like you can get a lot of laughs out of how kids react to a situation. Mm-hmm. And aliens are, it's pretty extreme, right? But one of the fun things you can do, and I think maybe this is because they're teenagers, is just take it matter of factly. Like, okay, aliens are here. We have to deal with it. And of course, a few of them are going to be freaked out and maybe not able to function in that situation. But other ones are going to, when you're a teenager, everything in the world is so immediate and you feel everything like right away, and you don't necessarily have context for what's happening or for your emotions. So aliens are just one more thing you got to deal with, right? Like you were worried about studying for that last exam, you were worried about maybe getting a summer job, and now you're worried about aliens too. So I think it gives you the breathing room as a writer to create characters that are going to, you can explore what's happening in that interaction, in that face value interaction, instead of being like, oh no, it's like a 45-year-old civil servant who works at the United Nations and they have to follow all these rules when they talk to the aliens. And these kids are just like, well, we're going to put our best foot forward and hopefully the earth doesn't get vaporized, you know?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's like those kid adventures that we had in the 90s, right? The Goonies, we had there was another one, Lean on Me, or no, not Lean on Me,
Stand by Me, where they find the dead body.
Me, that's it. Yeah. No, but I mean, you also had Lean on Me, which was the one in the school type of thing. There's like these different like kids bonding together. Sister Act was around then too, where there's comedy, but then there's also like togetherness and kind of forcing the people to kind of work together to meet a common goal, if you will.
You have that external pressure, right? And each of those, I pulled a lot from 90s teen movies like Can't Hardly Wait and Bring It On and things from that era, where you often have this group of disparate personalities that are together, whether they're on a cheerleading team or whether it's like the last party of the year at someone's house. And so you have like geeks and jocks and all sorts of stuff like that interacting together. And since it's Model UN, you're kind of self-selecting, like these kids are already pretty nerdy, but even within nerds, there's going to be striations. And as I mentioned, there's people who are there because they need the credit and people who are there because they have no other choice. Right. So you get some bullying, you get some smart Alex, you get that kind of stuff in there as well. So that's fun to play with.
In 96, I don't think there were pagers yet, right? Or they were just coming out, maybe?
No, there's nothing like that.
No,
so
nothing, right?
That's I like stories that don't rely on modern technology.
Yeah.
It really frees you up. Like I think a lot about, I was a big Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan.
Nice.
I was a teenager in the 90s and I loved it. And I think about now how many plots in that show where the Scooby gang doesn't know where Buffy is. Buffy doesn't know where they are. And that's where the tension for the episode comes from. But if you were to do Buffy today, all they'd have to do is be like, Buffy, we're being eaten by vampires here. Come help us. Or even just text it. And the show is so radically different, right?
Yeah.
So if you go back in time to an era where we're not all constantly connected or where we can't look up the answer to any question on the internet in our pocket, you could do so many different things story-wise. And to be honest, I don't really think that the world today is all that fun. And it's a way for me to escape.
I mean, the 90s present was a fun time. I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm not saying the 90s were quote unquote better just because I was young then.
Yeah.
But it does allow me to escape into something that I'm writing that I don't have to deal with things like the negative aspects of social media and interconnectivity and capitalism and corporate surveillance and all that stuff. Like, sure, that's interesting, but I don't want to be writing about that now because I'm living it.
Yeah.
So I'd rather write.
I mean, you go back to a time when there was a lot more fun to have.
Yeah, I go back to a time where these kids aren't worrying about like their clout score on Instagram,
Yeah, that or their knees are cricking and stuff like that. Because I got that problem. So so it's great that you're coming out with this book. It's a very good concept, and it kind of speaks to a lot of the '90s kids that want to reminisce, right? Like I saw Sony Discman in one of your slides, so I was like, that's a Sony Discman. But that being said, you're writing the book for kids nowadays, or are you writing it for the nostalgic, like 40-year-old person that kind of is like, I remember the 90s back then? Who's your audience, your target audience?
That's a really good question. The target audience when I write something is always me. And if I like it, I hope that other people will. And I'm not trying to be obtuse by saying that because it is a problem, like when you're marketing it. And as I mentioned, the previous books that I've written have either taken place in the 90s or the early 2000s. So the audience that I've managed to cultivate and has supported me is familiar with that time period, but I haven't gone back as far as high school. I don't know if people are as interested in that period of time, if they want to go back to that. Cause I mean, like for a lot of people, it's pretty negative. So it'll be interesting to see like who the audience for this is. And the other weird thing I've thought of is I don't know a ton about manga. I've read a little bit of it. I've enjoyed what I've read. And from what I understand, there's absolutely no way you can come up with some like slice of life high school story that hasn't already been done way better by a Japanese master creator over the last 25 years. So I tried to do something different with the sci-fi element, but at the same time, I don't know if those readers are on Kickstarter. Like, I don't know if teenagers today are on Kickstarter, if that's an audience that's there, because I know there's a lot of adults who use Kickstarter to find new comics. And I also don't know if you're a teenager today, if you can relate to what happened in the 90s. If that's, the 90s were 35 years ago, right? Like, if I was to think about it, when I was 16 in 1996, 35 years before that was like 1960. And then you think about all the stuff that was on TV. There was the Wonder Years. There were movies like Dazed and Confused was coming out around then, like a little bit later in the like early 70s. That was when that was being explored. And I remember watching that and being interested in it, even though I didn't grow up in that period and didn't necessarily have the cultural references. Yeah. So I don't know if that's still the case now. If like people today will look back and be like, oh, it's 1990. I can see the themes. I can make a connection. Like, I am intrigued by this. So that's really a dice roll for me.
Yeah, I usually gauge my kids' knowledge because I have 4, spanning from like 26 all the way down to 11.
Okay.
So I asked them, I'm like, so have you ever seen this, right? And I'll be like, Coming to America or Trading Places, or and they're like, I don't even know what that is. Or you can say like The Hunt for Red October or any of those movies, the first Terminator.
They're like touchstones for us, right?
They're like, what is that? I could watch the whole series of Buffy the Vampire Slayer right now if you want. And it's like, well, we had to wait until Thursday night every week to be
my sister had to,
and we didn't have that.
No, we didn't have that. My sister had to tape it for me and give it to me because I didn't have cable where I was living, so I had no way to watch it. So I would have to wait like an extra few days until I met up with her, and she would hand me a videotape that I would put in an analog video machine. But it's funny that you bring this up because I.e. Santiago Hernandez, he's in his late 20s, so he doesn't have a lot of the cultural references either. And when we were first designing the characters, I had to be really circumspect about how I describe their physical appearance because they're in a private school. So it's mostly uniforms, which means you get away with a lot. It's not as hard to come up with wardrobe for them, but like hairstyles and jewelry and technology, I had to be careful and be like, well, this kid's not going to be able to wear a mohawk to school in the 90s and get away with, like, it just won't happen. So we're gonna have to go with a different hairstyle here, but still make them look like punk rock or still make them look like the rebel in their group. So it was fun because when you do that kind of stuff, again, it's one of these creative limitations that becomes helpful because it forces you to interrogate things that you just take for granted. When you're forced to articulate ideas in a way that someone else understands to the point where they can put it on a page, it really makes you interrogate whether that needs to be in the story. So that was really helpful.
Yeah, and I mean, and plus you're also getting your firsthand account of somebody in their 20s learning about the 90s, right? So
exactly.
The artist is living this for the first time while you're writing the story, and it's a great combo because now he's going to want to make sure that people fall in love with it in his style, which is in his 20s, but still relate to people in their 90s. So like,
exactly.
When I say 90s, I mean 1990s, like around then type of.
And him growing up in South America is so different from me growing up in Canada in that period too. So like there's this other cultural layer and everything gets filtered through there. And that's honestly what makes cool art. It's like however many filters you can push your idea through and grab influences from and make something that's unique. I don't want to make a carbon copy of something that came out in the 90s. That's not interesting to me. The 90s are just a setting where I'm telling the story. It's like, I'm not a historian, and he's not a historian either. So it's just a fun prism, and through that prism you see the action.
So when are we going to get to AOL? I think like 98, 99, right?
You got to wait a little bit. Like these kids are like, maybe there's one computer in the school and maybe that one computer has dial-up internet, right? Like that's kind of
they don't even understand there's no Google.
Yeah.
Google hasn't even come out yet.
You're using like Yahoo or Alta Vista probably.
Yeah. Even if that, but so to kind of just bring it back, but like I see that you put a lot of heart into this book. What do you feel was the most rewarding part of writing this different type of story?
making something good out of shitty high school experiences is rewarding. For me, when I work on a story, the most amazing thing in the world is seeing it on the page. There's nothing, it's a cliche, but there's nothing cooler than getting pages in your inbox and having those pages be awesome and just be like, wow, that came out of my head, it went into someone else's head, and now it exists in the world as a totally separate thing that's external to both of us. And I don't know, it's weird to articulate that, but it's super amazing. And it's incredible to think that other people are going to see that and they're going to take it into their brains and it's going to mean something to them that could be totally different from whatever I intended, right? Like, again, that's the filter. It goes into their mind filter, and then they extract whatever meaning they can from that and whatever entertainment and whatever message they can get from that story. And that's incredible to think about, that we have that ability as humans to touch each other's minds, to like make a connection with someone else's mind that you've never met, and just through the page.
Yeah, and they can experience that story that you created and really in some cases could relate to it. Or in some cases they're like, really? You guys had to deal with that? You're like, so it's
shocking 90s.
Yeah. So I know that you said you have multiple projects that you've worked on in the past. Do you have anything going on beyond this book right now that you're going to be looking at, or you want to finish this book by next summer?
I want to finish this book. I'm focused on this book. I mean, like for work, I'm writing every day for magazines, websites, and whatnot. So it's a very different kind of writing to like shift gears and stuff. There's only so many words that can come from my brain. So like you spend a day writing about cars, and then you spend the next day writing about 90s aliens. And it's like, you got to have a balance, right? So if there's too many things going on at once, that things can get a little askew. So I try to focus on one project and then get it out, get it done, and get it in the hands of the people who've supported me.
Nice. No, that's awesome. I mean, a lot of times, a lot of people wait for the new story to come on. So knowing that you're kind of like striding right through and trying to get people the story is going to be great. Now, let me ask you, are you going to be creating this graphic novel? Are you going to then cut it down into a smaller comic book series so that you can kind of, work with CGC and all that stuff and kind of go for like once you get back to paper?
I think that I'm just going to do it as a single volume, in the way that, you see those thick manga sized volumes. I want to do something like that. I want to have it. I think that that's how this story is best experienced. I did consider serializing it across like 25-page installments, but to be honest, I don't think manga works well that way. Maybe in a magazine, but not necessarily in individual comic books. The other thing too is that's a lot of Kickstarter campaigns to run.
Yeah.
And it can be tough. And since I don't necessarily know what the audience is like for this book, being able to get it into the world quickly, but also being able to present something of value where I'm like, hey, you're taking a chance on this very different story from me, but it's 54 pages and it's super affordable because it's, we're offering it. I think I'm going to start around $10, something like that. And you can try it. And if you don't like it, you're out $10. It's not that bad. But if you do like it, you got some pretty good value there in terms of storytelling.
Yeah, I think it's cheaper than McDonald's right now. So
exactly,
you can't even get a Big Mac for $10 anymore.
Yeah, see, crazy. Again, that's our 90s roots coming through where we're like indignant about that.
Yeah. You used to be able to just go grab like that dollar value menu and
pocket change would get you a meal.
So, I know that you're kind of working on this book and I know that it's going through. Is there any like surprise characters that you're going to be working on that are going to like shock and awe people? Or is there going to be something that's like going to bring it to like the head where, you have that character that's going to be like, that type of stuff?
I feel like there's an arc for one of the characters that's not immediately obvious in the first half of the book, but when it happens in the second half, the breadcrumbs are there. And the readers will realize that it's been building to that. And it's something that I'm really excited for that character. I think it's something that character needs and is, and as I said, I'm excited for them to experience that. It's weird because like you, as a writer, you end up with these personal relationships with these creatures that you've created from your brain and these personalities. And it's just fun to hang out with them. Like I try not to create characters where I'm like, ugh, I have to write this character again. Like even characters that are maybe mean or bullies or whatever, I try to give them some kind of redeeming feature where when I'm writing for them, I'm like, okay, like I can make her a little bit funny as well as being mean, and she'll get her comeuppance later on and everyone will laugh at that and stuff like that. Like you got to leave yourself a window of hope when things are kind of dreary. And that's another thing too about this book. my past books have been pretty depressing in a lot of ways in terms of subject matter. And this time I was like, just tell a story that's funny and entertaining and isn't super heavy and isn't going to make you like really sad when you read it. So like that's a good step for me. I think it's positive.
Yeah. Like, I mean, the last Airbender, you know, Avatar is a good way to kind of show the comedy, but then a story saga, and then kind of like kids coming to their kind of fruition of a future that they're supposed to be setting up and stuff like that. So it kind of reminiscent of that type of style in my eyes, in the sense that, you know, you have these characters that are out there. Some of them are bad, some of them are good, but then they have those redeeming qualities that could later make them a friend instead of a foe type of thing, right?
Yeah,
So,
you know, like you always in those high school movies, there was always the kid who was introverted, and then there was the bullying character, and then like over the course of an evening, they find they have like a whole bunch of stuff in common, right?
mhm.
Those were always fun narratives to have. It's like the enemies to friends narrative kind of deal. And I don't have exactly that kind of energy in the story, but I do have the energy of very different people realizing that maybe that a common goal makes them not so different after all.
Yeah.
That's always interesting to me.
Yeah, I mean, it can break down walls. You never know, right?
Yeah.
So the big thing that I want to make sure that people get out of this is not only that you created this art, and that you had somebody draw it into fruition, if you will, right? So you
Yes.
created the mind, and then somebody drew the picture of your mind.
Yeah, but also made a lot of great contributions themselves, like as a
Yeah.
co-creator, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's, you know, the big thing is like you took two generations and basically brought them together to create this book, which is great.
Yeah.
Now, talking about people who aspire to be somebody like you, right? I know a lot of kids are out there, even adults in their early, you know, age of either retirement or after retirement in some cases, or even, you know, in the middle of their life. You know, like I got heard like from the doctor, they said that midlife crisis is around 35. That scared the crap out of me because I was just 35 at the time. I'm like, wait a second, this can't be happening.
Too
Midlife
soon.
crisis, yeah. But you know, for the next aspiring artists, in the sense of writing, creating comic books and stuff like that, and I call you guys an artist because you're basically a word artist, right? So what would kind of inspirational message could you give them, or just a good advice to give them if they wanted to go into the realm of where you're doing in writing?
I would say do it. Start today. Start tonight. Start putting your words on paper. Start drawing. Start creating your characters. There's absolutely nothing holding you back except for you know, when I was a kid, I had a lot of people who encouraged me as a writer just to like write stories and stuff, but absolutely no one presented it to me as something that could be a career. And that was wrong. It's been a fantastic career for me. And I wish I'd started sooner, but I didn't because I felt I had to go into other, science, technology, whatever, because that's the only way I could support myself. So every single person who ever comes to me and says, I want to be a writer, I strongly encourage you to do that. There are no barriers or gateways out there anymore. Crowdfunding is incredible. Publishing something yourself independently is the way to go, especially for comics. There's really no advantage to supplicating yourself in front of an independent publisher or a major publisher and hoping they're going to get your book out there, because they're honestly not going to do much more promotion or help than what you can do for yourself. So if you have a great idea, execute that idea. Ideas are not useful unless you actually do something with them. And doing something with them can be as simple as I said before, just start writing something down in your notebook and work on it every day and be disciplined about it and just get it done. And I think that, there are so many stories out there that need to be told. And don't think about anybody else except your own perspective, what you can bring to the table and the stories that only you can tell. That's the value that you have as a storyteller. No one else is like you. And that's amazing. Get those words out there and get them in front of people as soon as you can. And don't worry about making mistakes or failing. I've failed so many times in my life. Like there's always tomorrow. There's always something else. There's always something else that comes along when something doesn't go well. And failure is the tuition that we pay for our success. There's really no other way to do it. You learn so much every time something goes wrong. So just be fearless, and get started.
Nice, awesome. That's some really good words of inspiration. So, Benjamin, tell us again, just if they want to support the book, what are the links so that way they can kind of help support this book?
Sure. ModelUNComic.com. That takes you to the Kickstarter page. Right now, we're recording this in September, and it's the preview page where you can sign up to be notified when it goes live. It'll go live on October 7th, ModelUNComic.com. If you want to check out some of my writing about comics, my writing about cars, music, whatever, BenjaminHunting.com has all my stuff there. My portfolio's up there as well. You can find me on Instagram, which is probably the only social media service out there where people are consistently nice to me, or just nice in general. I think it's a pretty friendly place for the most part.
Yeah.
I'm at Hunting Benjamin there. I'm not really on a lot of other social media these days. So those are the three easiest ways to find out more about Model UN Comic.
All right, awesome. Yeah, no, thank you again, Benjamin. I really do appreciate you telling us about your book. This is the Behind the Comic Book podcast. It's basically all, leading up to our Icon Comiccon, November the 1st. It's really about getting back to that, exactly what Benjamin said, the roots of what we love about comic books, collectibles, and all the culture of 80s, 90s, and stuff like that, and even before, in some cases, for some people. But it's November the 1st from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., the Fishkill Rec Center in Fishkill, New York. Come and stop by iconcomiccon.com and make sure that you check out all these episodes that we're doing for season 2 of Behind the Comic Book podcast on our YouTube at Mr. 845 Social. It really helps to support a local social influencer that kind of wants to make sure that we get all the independents out there and every single small business that we can, because they're the heart, bread, and butter of a lot of the things that we do in this world. So why not support the small guy first? All right. That being said, everybody, this is Mr. 845, and we're signing off. Check out iconcomiccon.com.